Hi, Bill Burnett here again. I just wanted to talk to you today a little bit about storycraft and how you put together a story for the job interview. Now, we know that stories are important because they're how you answer behavioral event questions. You'll get a question around describing some event that occurred in the past that's going to reveal a competency that you know you want to reveal, and you're going to tell a story. And so I'm going to give you one method of crafting a story today. I'll give you another one in another video a little later on, but the model that I wanted to use is a very simple model. It's very well crafted by Chip and Dan Heath. They're a couple of brothers that wrote a book a few years ago called Made to Stick. And actually, I encourage you to get that book. It's about how you craft a memorable message. And one thing you want is you want your stories to be memorable in the job interview. And you know a story is really memorable if you're in a crowd, you tell the story, the crowd breaks up and somebody goes and repeats your story to another group. You know you've got a great story then. So their model is the success model, SUCCES. I actually add a correct final S for short, because you want, in the job interview, you want your stories to be short. And I say if you craft a story and you practice it at home, and say it comes out to be 2 minutes, which is a good time, when you actually get to the job interview and you tell the story, it'll probably take more like 3 minutes. That's because we tend to embellish whenever we tell a story, and that'll happen. So the first S stands for simple. You want your story to be simple, succinct, have one real point that you want to make in the story. It's okay sometimes to have sort of additional elements in the story if they bring the story to life. But you want to really get it focused on one thing. And these are stories around things that you've done that reveal competencies. So you want to make sure that through the narrative of the story, that competency emerges. So the first S is for simple. U is for unexpectedness, surprise. For some reason, our brains love surprise. It's why we love jokes. It's why we love magic. It's why we like mystery stories, because something surprising is supposed to happen at the end, right? With stories that you're going to tell in the job interview, that surprise should be set up in the beginning. That should be the hook. You want to hook your audience because you want them to want to hear the story. It won't be memorable. It won't have stickiness unless they want to hear the story. And so setting a hook is something you do. It takes a little bit of practice. The way I do it is I always write the story first, then look for some element that's in the story to be able to pull out surprise. In the Peak Interview book, one of the stories that I give you as an example is in answer to the question, what's your greatest weakness? Which parenthetically is kind of a stupid question because nobody's ever going to actually reveal their greatest weakness, right? But my answer to the question, you have to understand that my background was in financial services. So you'd expect me to say something like, I'm too organized, right? Or I don't delegate well enough, whatever it is. But I say, my greatest weakness is ice cream. Now, I know you don't think ice cream would have anything to do with a guy who has a background in financial services, but it turns out that it had a big impact. Well, now you want to know how my weakness for ice cream had a big impact on my work. At any rate, and then I tell the story and of course, reveal that. So unexpectedness is key in figuring out how to bake that in right at the beginning, set that hook. And it can be set by saying something as simple as, well, you wouldn't have expected such and such, right? And then you're going to tell a story about how it actually turned out that way. First C in success is for concrete. You want to include elements in your story that are sensory in nature, that describe a scene or a smell or a taste or a sound. And the reason that you want to do that is those things tap into our emotions and it pulls us into the story. And you want the listener to be pulled into the story. You want them to feel like they've just stepped in to the environment that you're describing. And those sensory elements allow them to do that. So bake those into the story. In my greatest weakness story, I pull the audience in by describing boarding an airplane and finding my seat and stowing my luggage in, something that everybody is pretty familiar with who I would be talking to in a job interview. And so it pulls them into the story right away, and they can relate to what I'm talking about. The second C is around is credible. You want your story to be credible, even if what took place in the story is pretty incredible. It's true, so you want to tell a true story, and you want it to be credible, so tell it in a credible way. E is for emotion. Now, emotion is marvelous in a story because it's really what taps into our sense of feelings. And they're great in most stories. You'll see them in movies and fiction books and so on. They always bake in plenty of emotion, but in a job interview, not that important. And you want to be sure that if you do tell an emotional story, that the person who's tearing up isn't you, right? You don't want to tear up telling your own story. So play it carefully with emotion, but if you're a really good storyteller and can craft emotion into it, by all means, do so. It really boosts the power of a story. And then the last S is for stories, and then my orthographically correct final S is for short. So keep it short, tell your story. So simple, unexpected, credible, concrete, emotional story. And that's Chip and Dan Heath's. I encourage you to get their book. It's called Made to Stick. You can get it from your public library, I'm sure, and give it a read. It's a fun read, plus it'll give you lots of insights into how to craft a memorable message. Anyway, good luck with your stories, and thank you. I'll see you in another video later.